believe it's 1:30 now, so yeah, I'm calling this meeting to order. Thank you for joining us. This is the, let's see, the, today's May 18th, yeah, Policy Committee for the Laredo and Webb County Area MPO. Can we have a roll call, please? Or the chairperson, I guess. Or go ahead, Kirby, if you don't mind. I think you've got the names. David,
Yes,
sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
I'd like to do the roll call, please.
Sure. Keith Science,
Present.
Norma Nelly Bielma, Dr. Marta Martinez, George Olkel, Tano E. Tijerina, Jesse Gonzalez,
Present.
John Galo, and David M. Salazar.
Present.
For the record, you do have a quorum.
Okay, having a quorum, we proceed. Do we have any citizens' comments?
Mayor, if we can pause here for just a minute, there is a lapse between what's being presented to the public on our Swag It Live Spectrum Channel 1300. It's about a 30-second lag. And then while we're pausing, just a opportunity to remind everybody, if you're not speaking, to mute your mics. It really helps with the feedback for the presentation for the audio. Thank you, everybody, very much for your participation, for your cooperation.
Just as a reminder, whoever does call in to speak, the speaker would have 3 minutes to speak, and we'll take as many calls as call in. But so far, we haven't had a single one.
No, sir, and if someone does call in, they'll call in to our staff, and our staff will alert us at any point in the meeting if we receive public input.
Okay, that's the case. We've allowed sufficient time for people to call in, and and we can bring them in as they do call in. So moving on to item 4, those are the items requiring policy committee action. The first item there is A, approval of the minutes for the virtual meeting held on April 20th of 2020. What says the committee? Is there a motion that we approve the minutes?
So moved that there's not any changes, Judge Tijerina.
Seconded by Commissioner Gonzalez.
Okay, as moved and seconded, as presented, a discussion? None heard. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any against, same sign. None heard. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Mayor, I'm here.
Oh, okay, good, doctor. How are you? Welcome.
Thank you, sir.
And then for the record, that's Dr. Marta Martinez, who's also a member of this committee.
John Galo's here also.
Okay, and Commissioner John Galo as well. Let the record note that, please. So moving on to item. Yes.
Mayor, if I may, just
Sure,
ask a simple question. Would you like us to be unmuted or muted? How do you want this to work out?
No, ideally, I guess unmute. Yeah, mute yourself, and then as you want to respond, go ahead, and you
Very
can.
good,
Okay, so item B, I've received public testimony and approval motion to initiate a 10-day public review and comment period for the following proposed amendments to the 2020-2045 MTP, which is the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. And there's item 1 and the addition A, I believe that, yeah. So is there a motion that we open for public hearing?
So moved to open up the public hearing.
10-day procedure.
I'll move it or second, whichever one needs to be done.
Okay, the judge moves and Commissioner Galo seconds on the 10-day public review and comment period. Discussion? None heard. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We do have a comment period beginning today, and it will continue on for a 10-day period. Could you just kind of question us or refresh the public, Mr. Kirby, as to what this is about?
Yes, sir. Vanessa, would you like to provide some context for the policy committee?
Sure. The proposed amendment involves the addition of one project, and that project is the widening of 359 from 2 to 4 lanes. And the location that's proposed for widening is located at 8.9 miles east of Loop 20 to 9.8 miles east of Loop 20. The proposed project cost is $7,367,400, and the proposed letting date is 2023.
Okay, so do we have any comments on this? For purposes of disclosure, my family's ranch may be included within this span of distance. I'm not quite sure, but there's really no action at this point. So, okay, so will it be, Mr. Kirby, since it's a 10-day period?
Yes, sir. You already opened the public hearing and 10-day comment period. So if you would like, we can move on to the next item.
Okay, so moving on to C, discussion with possible action on the presentation by TxDOT on the National Highway System. So go ahead, please.
Yeah, this is Caroline Mays. Good afternoon, Mayor. Hi, how are you doing?
Just fine. Good to have you on board again.
Yeah, no, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to present in front of you today. And thanks to the rest of the policy committee. I hope everybody in Laredo is doing fine.
Yeah, so we are considering. Yes, go ahead, please.
Everybody's doing good? Trade is going good?
Well, considering, no, trade is a little down, about 30%, but hopefully it'll pick up once the factories open up.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I heard that you'll be opening it up June 1st.
Well, it depends on these national policies, I guess, Mexico and U.S. and Canada. Oh, yeah, as far as USMCA, no, you're right.
Yeah, okay.
Correct.
Okay, yeah. But anyways, thank you for having us to present to you today the final recommendations for the Laredo NHS review and modifications. Just quickly, as you recall, the process started back in July 2018 and culminating with this presentation to you all today. We've been in front of you as well as the TAC, I think twice. The last meeting with the TAC we held last week. So the outcome today is really for you all. This is an action item on your agenda to take action on the recommendations to modify the NHS network within Laredo. So we don't want to take too much time without further ado. I'll turn it over to Akila, and Akila is the Corridor Planning Branch Manager whose group has been spearheading the NHS review and coordination with all the MPOs throughout the state. So Akila?
Yeah, thank you, Caroline. Just to have a quick couple of slides for your review today for the policy board's review. I'll just go over it quickly. This first slide here talks about the major considerations and evaluation criteria that was used. NHS designation is primarily focused on transportation systems that has the largest impact on movement of goods and people. It has more of a regional perspective. So with that in mind, I'll just quickly go over some of the bullets that we have here that was used as we conducted this evaluation. So we were looking at the facilities to see if it was serving major activity centers, if the facility was actually providing long-distance travel needs and connecting large regions, and also looking to see if the particular facility was providing mobility across the region, if it was connecting either the urban core with the outerlying areas and so on. NHS, as I said, has a regional perspective, so we were avoiding residential areas that don't have very good connectivity with surrounding land uses. We were also looking for a direct link and connectivity with interstate highways, freeways, and expressways when we were looking at the evaluation. This is just a high-level overview of what we did. We have developed a data-driven, detailed analysis that was presented to the technical committee before. The next slide provides a summary of that analysis. And we are here today. This slide here provides a summary of the analysis that was completed that has been approved by the technical committee. So in essence, for the entire Laredo area, there are 3 potential additions that are being recommended and 3 potential removals that are being recommended. The map to your right shows those additions in green and the removals in red. The 3 facilities that are being recommended to be added to the National Highway System, NHS system, are the Business 59 or Saunders Street from US 59 to I-35, Cuatro Vientos Drive or State Loop 20 from State Highway 359 to Mannaheim, and also the small portion of Mannaheim from State Loop 20 to US 83. So those are the 3 facilities that are being recommended to be added to the NHS system. And then based on the review, there are 3 facilities that are recommended to be removed. One is the Clark Boulevard or Spur 400, Meadow Avenue and Arkansas Avenue. All those are shown in red on the map. So if you look at the additions and removals, there is a net increase in mileage in the NHS system. There's a net increase of 4.2 miles. In addition to looking at these facilities, we also looked at the intermodal connectors to the port facility. There are 3 facilities that are being recommended to be added over there again. There is Uniroyal Drive and Carriers Drive and their interchanges with I-35, and also Port Drive. These facilities have been recently developed after the 2012 MAP 21 NHS designation. So these were not included previously, and so now we are recommending that those be included. And those are more logical connections to the I-35 NHS system. And we're also recommending that the northbound frontage road that's currently being designated as part of the NHS be removed, and the actual connections to Uniroyal, Carrier, and Port Drives be added to the NHS system. So that's a quick summary of the additions and removals recommended by the technical committee, which we're presenting to you today. This slide shows the next steps. So as Caroline mentioned, this is already presented to the TAC committee on May 12th and was approved. We are here today in front of you requesting for a decision.
May I have a question?
Yes,
go
go ahead, please, Commissioner Galo, and thank you for the report also too, Ms. Aguila. Yes, go ahead, Commissioner.
Yeah. You're suggesting that we remove a frontage road? Aren't all the frontage roads included with the highway system?
Yes, it is. It is just that right now, the way it is included in the NHS system, the 3 facilities that need to be added actually are the Uniroyal, Carriers, and Port Drives. But the frontage road, I think I'll defer to Travis if you're on the line.
Yes, this is Travis Norton from Jacobs Engineering, and we helped the corridor planning group with this study. So the northbound frontage road of I-35 was designated as a connector between the national highway system and the port. That was designated before the connections on Uniroyal and Carriers and the interchange with I-35 was constructed. So the recommended modification just reflects the active connectivity between the port and I-35 that exists today.
Oh, but it won't be, I mean, it'll still be maintained by TxDOT, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I thought they know that the city was going to take over on the, very well, thank
No.
you.
No.
Yeah,
The
but let
frontage
me
road
ask you
still-
too, those portions, those maps or those distances shown in red are potential removals. So this, what's the whole purpose of this? I'm a little lost. By removing these, we're doing what now? We're obviously, what does it serve when we remove these streets or whatever, well, not streets. Well, yes, I guess also too, we have Clark and Meadow in Arkansas. What are we doing by removing them in your plan?
Yes, Mayor, I think providing a little bit of a background might help here. So in 2012, based on the MAP 21 legislation, a lot of the facilities that were called as primary arterial were automatically added into the NHS system, even though they were not completely fitting into the overarching goal of NHS system, which is regional connectivity. So that's one perspective that we were looking at when we were evaluating these facilities. In terms of implications, so those three facilities that are being recommended for removal are actually local roads. They are owned by the cities, and they don't serve a regional connection purpose. So that's the reason why they're being recommended to be removed.
Okay, but it's not going to hurt. Yeah, but it's not going to hurt the city in applying for funds or aside from just cleaning up, I guess
Mayor, if I can jump in, we had over an hour-long presentation with the NHS as part of the technical committee, and I asked them to just summarize it and bring it to you all, and then based on your questions, they could go into more depth. Those are exactly the questions that we had at the technical committee, asking about the implications to funding. And in this situation, it's actually quite the reverse. As Akila pointed out, in 2011, automatically by some legislation, all the arterials were picked up as part of the NHS. Some states at that time did a review of what made sense and what didn't, and others just took them all in and put them in as part of the NHS. Now, with Texas, we're getting around to actually reviewing what was added in 2011 and saying, well, what makes sense to be part of the national highway system, and what really is just a local road that doesn't serve different region, going from region to region is just something going, within the region. And so actually, one of the advantages of removing from the NHS is that we're not held to the same standard if we were to expand or modify any of these roads. When they're part of the NHS, we have federal design standards, federal signage standards, access connection standards that we have to adhere to. And so there is still federal funding that can be used on these roads. And that funding, of course, is very competitive. But with removing them, it doesn't hurt that potential. And it actually allows us to just apply our standards instead of the federal standards to some of these local roads that really don't serve a regional purpose.
Okay, these are existing roads, obviously, because we don't show the chart routing here, which is a road that's coming hopefully within the next year and a half or so.
That's correct. This is just the existing network.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Any other questions?
And just to add, so they brought us this presentation. We went through it in detail, and on the technical committee, both the county and the city, the staff that sit on that you've appointed to sit on that, we've looked at this and we agree with them that this makes sense, and it's a good recommendation to make these removals and make these additions.
Okay, just to go back to that point, if I may, though. So TxDOT will maintain the frontage road that goes to Port Laredo?
Yes,
Correct.
Okay.
yeah, we will, yeah.
You were saying it was not what Kirby was just saying was not a necessary connector. And I said, well, I know you have I-35, but there will be a lot of connections along frontage road in the future.
Yeah, generally, and David is on that. This is Caroline. Yes, the frontage roads, those are TxDOT's responsibilities. And as Akila mentioned earlier, really the purpose of the NHS is this regional connectivity, and a lot of it too with the intermodal connectors is to connect freight intensive areas as well. And for instance, Akila mentioned Uniroyal, Carrier, and Port Drive. Those areas, those roadways exist today, and generally they're connecting to the interstate system. So that's kind of their purpose. With the frontage road, it's not necessarily connecting to an interstate system. It's part of the interstate system. So that's kind of the difference. But in terms of maintenance, that is TxDOT's responsibility.
Mayor, may I be heard?
Yes, go ahead, please. Yeah, Dr. Marta Martinez, go ahead.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody for explaining this to us. I guess I'm a little hesitant to remove or the potential removal of that large stretch of 8.7 miles heading to Uniroyal, and I'll explain why. None of that area has been developed yet. And so we don't know what it's going to look like here in the next 10 years, but we have seen a continued push of development of manufacturing and warehousing in that area along that corridor, especially along that access road. And so removing it, I think it is a little premature. The addition of the 3 corridors makes perfect sense, but there's still a lot of development that is going to happen there. Now, if we're trying to reflect what currently is occurring, that's fine, but I don't see significant exits being developed before Uniroyal or Carrier to exit off of I-35. So if people develop to the east of I-35, what access are they going to have to be able to bring their merchandise in or take their merchandise out? It's going to be that access road that's going to take them north up to the exchanges that we're going to have up in the Port of Laredo. And so I'm a little hesitant to remove that at this point because I think we're still growing in that area and we have no other exits to get people in and out if people do continue the same pattern of development, which Mr. Snyderman can speak to, which is warehousing and manufacturing in that area. And I guess I'll let the experts talk afterwards.
Okay, so this is Caroline Mays with TxDOT. So if I can answer that, the frontage road that you see it was considered an intermodal connector, and an intermodal connector is a road that provides last mile connectivity to major rail, port, airport, or intermodal freight facilities. And so in this case, right now, the Uniroyal and all the other new corridors are actually providing that information. So it would not, removing it from the NHS doesn't, impede the ability to improve the corridor, the frontage road, because it's part of the interstate. TxDOT would improve that. If new businesses come, the investment to be made to improve the interchange to be able to accommodate those. So whether, in this case, removing the frontage roads from the intermodal connector has no implications at all for any future developments that come and investments that would be made to accommodate those businesses.
No, I'm not speaking to the money aspect. I understand. I'm speaking to the planning aspect of it. In other words, if you look at that land, it's not developed yet, and there are no exits going in and out of I-35 for miles. And really, if people are going to develop there, this is going to be an intermodal connector, taking those warehouses up to the Port of Laredo and then across I-35 into Mexico or down south. And so I just disagree that this is not going to be an intermodal connector. I think that it is, because that whole area hasn't been developed at all. We don't know what it's going to look like, but I can assure you that that it's been pushing towards manufacturing and warehousing. And so I just think that there's too much land there, and if people were to develop there, there's no entrance to I-35 there, and so they're going to have to connect from their place of business up to the port and then down south to Laredo, or it's going to be a two-way on that side. I don't know how that would play out. But I do think that it's still an intermodal connector. I do think that it's still, you don't see it right now, but as development continues, it's going to be the only connection to get to I-35 for those businesses.
So let me ask you this: do we have a south corridor as well? South.
No, it's just the northbound.
Yeah.
It's just the northbound. And to speak to that question, that concern you just raised, as was addressed, if there's no funding implications, and also with the planning, there are no planning implications with removing this from the NHS. In fact, if anything, as I mentioned before, it won't fall under the design and standard requirements that are there for the NHS. Although, because this is a frontage road, functionally, I don't think there would have been any difference regardless of whether it's in or out of the NHS to how we plan for future exits. And you're exactly right. We need that connectivity as this industrial area continues to grow, and that's obvious to anybody who sees the development coming. So removing this from the NHS is not going to have any implications to the planning side either, in terms of how we lay out these future.
Well, if that's the case, Mr. Snyderman, then why remove it? What's the point? If it doesn't have any implications one way or another, then it doesn't really matter if we leave it on there, does it?
For what you just spoke to, no. But if you look at what they're trying to accomplish with the NHS, they have a set of parameters that meet what is NHS, and this doesn't meet that. And so they're trying to take what happened in 2011, where they just added a bunch, and they're trying to thin that out to what really makes sense in terms of having an actual system.
I just think that this makes sense. And also, when we're talking about minimum standards in Laredo, Texas, and you're talking about an access roads, we have to have, and maybe I'm wrong on this one, but we have to have, interstate standards when we're talking about that. It can't be the local standard for access roads. That doesn't make any sense. Or anything coming onto the access road for that matter.
Mr. Chairman, this is George Altgeld. May I be heard, sir?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
I'm sorry. So what's the benefit of removing that I-35 connector? Staff, TxDOT?
Well, there's no benefit, and I think Kirby kind of alluded to this, that really it doesn't fit, the definition of an intermodal connector today. When a lot of this were added in 2012, it was kind of just a large scale add, but in reviewing this corridors and applying current requirements and standards, this does not meet that. And then second is it has no planning and funding implications because the frontage roads are part of the interstate system that TxDOT planned and designed. And I could tell you from traveling around the state, you'll have the best designed roads to accommodate the traffic. We use Laredo District as one of the best examples on pavement design, intersection design, because they designed that to accommodate the truck traffic in the Laredo and Webb County region. So I could assure you that the district does an excellent job, and if they would not skim on a corridor like I-35, where you're seeing a lot of warehousing and development moving north, and again, those are things that they have to take into consideration. So, again, I just want to say it has no material implications planning or funding.
Now, when you use the word intermodal, and we're using the word intermodal in this context, are we talking about the traditional use of the word intermodal, i.e., from a commercial vehicle onto a train?
No. Intermodal here is used in terms of connection between a major rail facility, a port, or airport, or intermodal facility like a rail. For instance, let's take the Uniroyal Carrier Boulevard and the port. You got the UP Railroad Terminal right there. You got a lot of warehousing distribution centers. So that's what this is referring to. It's referring to freight activity, not from one mode to the another. It's connecting those modes, those key.
Okay, well, I mean, like the biggest hub of intermodal activity, or at least one of the biggest hubs, in my estimation, is in between the Union Pacific Railroad and the rest of the warehouse districts, and a lot of that that connectivity happens along the I-35 northbound frontage road. Am I missing something? Why would we want to remove that? Why would we want to remove that as a I guess a connector, if you will?
Yeah, the connector is the roadways connecting to the interstate system. So those corridors are connecting to I-35.
Yeah,
Caroline, this is David Salazar with TxDOT.
Yeah.
So one thing to remember is that this NHS is not a something that's set in stone. We can always modify this. Bottom line, the consultant and TxDOT, when we do the NHA system, there's a series of guidelines that we have to follow. And based on the data that was gathered by the consulting firm and engineers, this northbound frontage road, it is not serving the definition of an intermodal connector. I agree with you that there's a lot of development there, but for the most part, the connection is the I-35 and then tying in at the Untitled interchange there. The frontage road, again, is not serving as an intermodal connector. When it comes to planning or funding, I can assure you right now that currently within TxDOT, if y'all seen these list of projects that have been presented to you, we are currently working from Shiloh, milepost 7, all the way out to milepost 28. We are widening those to 3 lanes on the interstate. We're addressing the incoming traffic. We're right now currently in our planning phase. We have at least a tie-in crossover, at least 1.5 miles in each direction, beginning at Loop 20 project for each 1.5 miles. We plan on having an interchange there to alleviate the traffic. There is the Ruth and Jarchal project, which we'll be talking about later. It's going to be tying in. There's discussions about Vallecillo. So there's no doubt, and we're not trying to say that this development is not coming there. Bottom line, at this point in time, and based on the data that we've collaborated and gathered, it is not serving as an intermodal connector. It is not going to affect the planning, and we are moving forward with the design of that interstate. And as we move forward, we also adjust for the frontage roads as well. And like I mentioned earlier, we are planning our schematic plans, which I know it's been presented before to the MPO. We are planning for the future development from milepost 7 all the way to milepost 28, 6 lanes of travel lanes with interchanges every 1.5 miles. So to say that it's going to be affected, the funding, it's not. Funding will not be affected. Planning is not going to be affected. Bottom line, we have to submit this report, and based on our data, that frontage road, it is not serving as an intermodal connector. There may be development coming, but it's not quite there. Bottom line, the connection right now is Interstate 35.
Guy, if I may, John Gale again. Guys, I think what they're just basically saying is they're drawing a map with the direct routes. You know, now since the Port of Laredo exits there, you know, none of the frontage roads I see are on this map. So that it makes sense. These are just the direct connectors, just direct routes. If not all the frontage roads be considered intermodal, you know. So as long as they're taking care of the bill, I don't think there's really any issues.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Sure, go ahead, sir.
I do think that Mr. Gala brings up a good point. You know, if we were talking about an access road that, let's say, went north of Laredo 40 miles or something, that an access road that went, you know, to Cotula, I guess that makes sense. But when you're talking about going from our city and warehouses that are being built to the Port of Laredo, I think it takes a different, it's just a different type of road, if you will. And I see that road being utilized a lot. I was just going to ask, do we have, do you guys have the numbers that illustrate that this isn't actually being utilized in this sense? You guys have the traffic counts that we can take a look at real quick?
And Travis, you probably can help with this. I don't think the NHS is necessarily just about the traffic numbers. With the intermodal connector, it's not just about the traffic numbers.
Yeah, so we don't have the traffic numbers exactly on this frontage road in front of us right now, but I will say that part of the criteria for linking the roadway and a facility to the NHS is about traffic generation. And that's traffic generation from the Port of Laredo back to the National Highway System, and also about the route that would be followed to make that connection. And so for the connection from the port back to I-35, that would be on Port, Uniroyal, and Carriers. And so you can link the traffic from the port back to those facilities specifically.
Yeah,
So,
but are these recommendations being made without a traffic count at all?
George,
because we do have traffic count,
Yeah.
but the intent of the requirements and the review of the NHS, which is laid out by federal highway, it's a connector. That's really the key here. It's a connector. It's not about the traffic volume. So, for instance, let's take the UP Railroad Terminal and how many trucks go from that terminal to I-35, and providing that, UP terminal with access or connector to I-35, that's the underlying requirement. Even if they had, 100 or 200 trucks a day versus a facility that has, let's say 10,000 trucks a day, if it's not necessarily connecting and meeting the definition of an intermodal connector, then it would not be.
Okay. So you're saying because it doesn't connect one way to the other. In other words, it has to be a bidirectional connection. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, because let's say trucks that are going to drop, let's say, a container to the rail terminal, they will come and exit I-35 and go on Uniroyal, go to a port connector, vice versa. The trucks that are coming from the terminal can go and access I-35. So really, it's providing that facility, a last mile connection.
So where is Union Pacific then? Where is their intermodal connector for Union Pacific? The rail. Which way would they go? What would be their connector?
They'll go to Port Drive. From Port Drive.
And how do they get to Port Drive?
On 35.
35.
Yeah, they use I-35 and then they get on Uniroyal or Carriers and then access Port Drive. And then Uniroyal, Carriers, and Port Drive, those are all new roadways that were built after the 2012 NHS designation.
Okay.
Which is why
I understand.
You're welcome.
Okay, any further discussion on this? I think we had plenty, yeah. Okay, go ahead with your report.
Mayor,
Yes.
what they're looking for here is a recommendation to staff to drop a resolution, and then we'd bring that resolution next time that you are agreeing with these recommendations. So that's what they're ultimately looking for, is if this board wishes, if the policy committee wishes, a resolution that you agree with these recommendations.
I'll move to agree with the recommendations and to bring them forward a resolution.
Okay, the motion is presented by Commissioner Gayla. Do we have a second?
Second.
A second by Judge Tejerina. Can we, by way of the discussion that we had, could we incorporate maybe some of these protections that by way of this resolution that we know for a fact that's not going to impact financially and operationally or whatever, and that that we could also in the future it's amenable to including these roads again or these connectors again. Just
Commissioner Gayla would have to amend his motion, and I would have to amend my second. So whatever he would like to add.
Yeah.
We all got caught up on the terminology and I guess the designation. I believe I understand what it is, and it's really, I don't think any of that's necessary. It's still a text dot right away. It's their roadway. They're going to maintain it. They're going to do what they need to keep it up. The access is there. It's mainly just showing like the direct route to go. Don't go on the frontage road. Get on 35. Get off 35 at the Port of Laredo or wherever you need to get off at. That's basically what it is.
Okay, do you agree with that, Carolyn?
Yeah. And then, David mentioned earlier that, again, there's periodic review of the NHS, so there's ability to come back, later, like won't say within the next 2, but 5 or, whatever, how many years, and review it again to see are these corridors still valid for NHS and intermodal connector requirements. If not, are there others? Because we mentioned Uniroyal, Port Drive, and Carrier were not there in 2012. So now they're there. So you have the ability to do that, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Okay, call for the question. All those in favor say aye.
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 Yeah, any opposed? None opposed? I'm sorry?
I do, Mayor. I still don't have enough information. I just don't get it. And so I do have to say that I just don't quite understand the standards and stuff. And I apologize.
Oh, no, it's
I
fine.
didn't read enough about all this stuff to be able to take this motion on without having at least some traffic information and that sort of stuff. So I do have to oppose it at this time.
Okay, so there's
You
one.
could oppose it or abstain, whichever one you like, Doc.
No. I think that I have to oppose it. I just don't think I have enough information to make this decision, and I think that we should probably think about this a little bit more. And that's just, but again, we're at the vote at this point.
Okay, so one opposed.
I oppose as well, Mr. Mayor, for the same reasons.
Okay, so there's two in opposition, and then we have how many others? Kirby, you don't have a list of, so we have two.
Everybody else was in a, you want to, how about we do a roll call?
It'll be four in favor at least, David, myself, the judge, and the mayor.
Yeah, that's fine. And so David, you're.
I'll be in favor. I'll be in favor as well, Mayor.
As well.
Okay, so yeah, so it carries then. Yeah, we need 4 votes, I guess. Do we need, 4
No,
votes?
no, you just need a majority of those that are present.
And that's 4? We have 7 present?
Yes.
Okay, so we have 4 votes, so motion carries. Okay, then, I'm moving on.
Before we move on, Mayor, can I just say thank you to those who participated from the NHS and from TxDOT. If you would like, you're more than welcome to leave the meeting if that's the item you came here for. Appreciate your time, and thank you for joining us.
Okay. Yeah,
Thank
thank
you,
you very
Carolyn.
much, Toby. Thank you, Mayor, and the rest of the policy committee. We appreciate you having us. Thank you.
We'll draft that resolution and bring it next time.
Okay, appreciate it.
Thank you again for participating, you, Akila, yeah, and the other gentleman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Okay, go ahead. Next is, let's see, discussion. Yeah, with a possible action on the HR routing.
Good afternoon. This is Guillermo Cuellar, the Assistant County Engineer. As part of the Webb County project, we are in the process of completing the schematic at 100%. It should be complete by the end of the month, as well as other documents as an environmental. It should also be complete by the end of the month. That's the only update that I have so far.
Okay, I would ask also on that title issue, has that been resolved? The HR trust came sometime back.
Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
If I may, this is Ramon Chavez. Good afternoon, everybody. I did reach out to our city manager, Mr. Van Steenberg. I received a response from Mr. Van Steenberg that the draft of the document has been completed and discussions on some of the language have begun. It has not been signed yet, but they expect that will occur in the near future. That was his response. So I will continue following up with him.
Okay, because this is all subject to that, right? If for some reason that the document is not signed and that person asserts ownership different than what we're thinking, it may pose a risk, correct?
That is my understanding, Mayor.
Okay, so I guess with that, so we need to get it resolved and hope, and you'll follow through, Ramon, on that?
Yes, I will, Mayor. I will continue to follow up with Mr. Van Steenberg as we move forward and continue working together on this.
Okay, could you have a report for us next month?
I will continue to update you and the rest of the committee just to make sure that we know and understand the latest information.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mayor, if I may.
Yes, go ahead, please.
The environmental is underway. I know they were still working on some things, so it does buy them and us a little more time, I guess. Because there's really not much that can be done until the environmental is complete. So.
Okay, well, that's fine. There's no other report on this, so I guess we move on. Let's see, reports also now on item B, Roman numeral 5A, a status report on the ongoing active transportation plan. Councilman Algid. George.
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I was hoping staff could give us an update on that.
Yes, sir, we're prepared to do so. We'll take about 5 to 10 minutes, give you an update of where we're at with this. Myself, Vanessa, and Jason Inaosa, who is new to the team late last year, has been working on this, and I've asked him to give us this presentation today. Jason?
Good afternoon, Policy Committee. This is Jason Inaosa. I'd like to present to you the active transportation plan. Just a little bit on touch base on our introduction, the purpose of our active transportation plan, a little bit of our team and our approach, discuss a little bit about the building on our past work, share with you all our outline, some of the outreach we've been doing, and our timeline, as well as how you can get involved. So what is the purpose? What is active transportation? Some of you might ask. I put that up for an open question to you all, but I'll read to you the technical definition. Active transportation is a means of getting around that is achieved through human-powered mobility. This includes walking, cycling, and using transit, as well as the needs of a wheelchair and other types of non-motorized active transportation. And so what we're asking is, why do we want more of it? And I'll share with you a little bit of Governor Abbott's speech.
Let's ask that question, Jason. What does the policy committee think? Do we want more active transportation, and why? Why do we want more, if we do? Thoughts?
Are you asking the policy committee?
Yes, sir.
Well, I don't want to speak for everyone, but I know that we have our comp plan, which is everyone speaking to us, and in that comp plan, with the over 1,500 actual physical participants, and I think the number keeps climbing with engagements on the comp plan's website. We're being told that there need to be more mobility options besides just this single occupancy vehicle or just the mass transit that we have currently. There needs to be other alternatives to be able to safely get around in Laredo, and by safely, at least as it was told to us by our constituents in the comp plan, is that there be these, buffered, shaded, protected corridors where pedestrians, cyclists, people on scooters, wheelchairs can have this, way to get around, and not from a recreational standpoint, but that just happens to be a minor footnote. But from the standpoint of physical mobility is social mobility. So we all say we want to, take this population of ours, which is 30% at or below the poverty line, and we want to bring them out of poverty into the middle class. Well, if you can't afford a vehicle, getting around should be something that you can safely do through these active transit medium. And when you take that back to currently there's already a lot of people just making use of the facilities, the limited facilities that we do have, and just frankly taking to the streets, then we've, I think we're seeing what we need to be doing. I would like to point out that my private investigator's niece, Belinda, was hit last night. A hit and run. She was on her bicycle in her neighborhood, and like so many other pedestrians and cyclists, keep one after. I mean, I don't know how many more among us have to get hit before we really take this seriously. So it's a safety issue, but it's also a very powerful economic development issue, and so much so that even Governor Abbott, I see your next slide, I want to steal your thunder, but even Governor Abbott is speaking to this as a
Would you like to read that?
get around. Yeah. So it's the direction we have to be headed in, because from a sustainability standpoint, we know we can't build roads and highways to fix the problem, because that just creates induced demand. We know that there's just so many, whether it's a drainage easement or a sidewalk that could be expanded. There's already so much real estate that we already own that we could, retrofit, because for every mile of roadway, you can build 60 miles of trail and active transit. So, but
Yeah, so there's a couple of ways to think about this. It's not about, hey, let's get everybody on bicycle because we don't want to be green. No, it's very practical, and that is we want to provide people more options, because the idea that we're just going to continue down one major way of transportation for personal vehicles is just not true. And here's the governor's quote. The bottom line is this. This is the Governor Abbott. The way people get around, the way people live is going to change. As a result, this generation of roads is probably the last major build out of roads we'll have in the state of Texas, even considering the fact that Texas is the fastest growing state in America. The future of transportation lies in alternatives to traditional motor vehicle travel. So from the top all the way throughout the state, everyone's recognizing we just want to provide more options for people to get around. And that's what this plan does. It examines the existing conditions. We engage the public, creating a plan that will be regularly updated. We'll have an appendix. It can be adopted as appendix of the comp plan for the city, although this document is for both the city and the county because it applies to the MPO, but we'll have a section that can be used so that it can be adopted as part of the comp plan for the city. And that'll include a complete streets policy that the city can use. Jason, you want to continue?
Just to touch on what they were talking about, bicycle and pedestrian networks are largely under the jurisdiction of cities and MPOs. And so these types of measures address various critical issues that we deal with both locally and countywide. So this is a strategic method to aim at.
If you get any farther, I don't know if we should be putting words in their mouths, especially dress, bicycle and stuff. But I'm not sure that's what he was talking about. Because we have alternate methods of transportation. We got, auto driving cars. We're going to have auto driving trucks. We have, there are a lot of flying cars getting into the market now. I don't know by when they will be, but the whole realm is really changing. So I don't think we're talking about just bicycle traffic, scooter traffic. I do believe in connectivity and make sure that, urban, what do you call it? Not urban, but your neighborhood where you can get to the stores, where you can get to the parks, and not be in cars. That part I do believe in. But this large plan, I don't think so.
Commissioner Galo, you're cutting in and out just a little bit. Just wanted you to be aware of that. But I understood you. And if you look at the full, we did pull this quote out of context. He was talking at a function where he was speaking about his daughter, who is at college and gets around pretty much without a car through different modes of traffic as pedestrian and bicyclists, using Uber as well. So he was speaking to, and we're not speaking here just to bicycling. We're speaking to all the alternative ways of transportation, of which active transportation is a component. And it's not the only component, but it is an important component of getting around. So we agree.
Anyone else? Yes, go ahead, please, with your report.
Okay, I just want to share with you the team and our approach. The MPO staff is on board, and we've got some consultants helping us with some technical stuff, Nelson and Nygaard. We've been consulting with the Walk, Bike, Ride Laredo and other community organizations. As we mentioned, we want this study to be data-driven, practical, that we can implement, and really engage the public on what they're seeking. One question I would ask you all is how many projects and plans do we have that address active transportation, both city and county-wide, if you would have to guess?
Too few.
2?
I said too few.
Anybody want to wager a guess here?
I'd say 5.
5? We have 30. Believe it or not. Believe it or not, we have 30. And there's a point we want to make here. If you look at all the plans that we've produced in the last several years, it's not for a lack of thinking about active transportation in this community, in this region, that we have not, that we may not be as far as we could be or as far as other regions are. So with this plan is not about creating something that's never been thought of before in Laredo. We're going to be pulling heavily from many plans in the past that have envisioned active transportation. So in other words, the answer is not, oh, we need to discover something here that's never been discovered. No, people have known, we have a lot of plans in the past talking about active transportation. What we need is some practical steps that starting implementing these plans and a route on how to get there. A few pictures. Share what you learned here from these pictures.
So yeah, these are down Iturbide. This is 19, if I'm not mistaken, 1907. So we could say this is not our first ride. You can see a bicycle down there, and I think on the secondary image, if you go to the next one, Kirby.
This is the original Bike Laredo gang.
Nice.
And so these are on Flores Street, and the one on the right, I think they're celebrating Washington's celebration. These are both early 1900s. So people have been getting around Laredo on bicycle, and like Kirby mentioned, this is nothing new to the city, but we're trying to, for the MPO's purpose, provide a guidance of how, if we do place them, where would they go and what types of facilities would they be? Because every situation is unique. A little bit about our outline. We've got intro, existing condition summary, how we engage with the public, and some of our recommendations, the action plan that we're going to take, and the complete streets policy to wrap it all together. Our plan, public outreach that included the planning nights pre-COVID, so we made 1 through 6 districts, and we missed the final 2, which we'll come around to. Engaging with Walk, Bike, Ride Laredo, and here in the next couple of days, we'll be releasing our online survey. We're going to host some workshops with communities, see what, get a feel for their feedback and some kind of refined our route. And then public meetings for adoption as an appendix to the comp plan. There are a few images from our planning nights. What we did is, from our planning nights also included the active transportation component. We got great feedback from constituents from all ages. I mean, they were interested, engaged. They didn't really know that we had so many routes available. There was a little bit of disparity where some were available, some were not. But overall, the interest in it was, they were engaged and wanted to know more.
Yeah, an interesting point here. Jason, was it the older folks that maybe think about serious things like transportation that were more interested in active transportation, or was it younger folks?
I'd definitely say it was a lot of the younger folks. If you look at that image on the top left, that's myself and some students from Santo Niño, or Los Obispos, sorry. And they were talking about why can't, the younger, shorter one on the right said, why can't I get from my house to the Walmart like on a bike? Because he's like, I have to be on the road. And he talks about his experiences on trying to traverse even just close distances, and he was not able to do that. And some of these other kids mentioned, they got one car in their household, and either they walk to the store or, they wait for a ride, and providing them an option. On the south side is what we talked about, trails that connect you to places, connecting people, spaces, and places.
Yeah, believe it or not, these group of kids, I thought they would just come in, grab some food and go. They ended up speaking with Jason for over 45 minutes, looking at that map, giving ideas, talking about how they get around town, on their bicycle, and sometimes using transit.
And if I may, Mr. Edmund, in the mayor, the other, and I think we've all seen this, frankly, is the cartonero or the albañil who's got that milk crate, zip tied to his handlebars, and he's got all his tools in it. We see a lot of the warehouse workers, getting around town on their bicycles, and so they're riding bikes not because they want to. They're riding bikes because they have to, and that's also a big part of the riding public. You know, much like some of the distinguished gentlemen in those pictures of times past, you've got albeit perhaps a different class, but distinguished nonetheless, of gentlemen who are going to work on their bikes, and then you've got those safe routes to schools that we're trying to create, and all the other components. I mean, if you just think about, you know, Del Mar Boulevard alone, that during the school year turns into a parking lot twice a day, 5 times a week, and how if there were additional investments in safe routes to schools, a lot of that traffic, frankly, could be ameliorated because there would be these buffered, shaded, protected corridors that don't interfere with cars. As Commissioner Galo aptly pointed out, they would have their own way to get in and around, and frankly, cars would benefit by having these alternative routes because they wouldn't be competing 5 days a week, twice a day, with mom and dad who are trying to get their kids to school on time. I mean, and then even if you just look at that footprint of Alexander, I mean, so much of Alexander High School's footprint is parking lot. You know, that's land that could otherwise be generating tax revenue or put to some other, you know, public purpose, that instead of it's just a big, it's an empty space contributing to the watershed.
Let me ask you this, yeah, just so, because I know we're running short on time. So all of this translates into designated routes that won't compete with these major thoroughfares, I guess, or roads that we have that
Yes.
make it dangerous.
Mayor, that's one of the implications of this will be a suggestion of where we could have a plan for when we put paint on the ground or any improvements, that this is where it most makes sense. So
This is something that would come to us or to each respective body.
It will come to this body. It will come to this body as the active transportation plan, and you'll definitely have your input on how that, but we're getting that input from all the previous plans, the best data, traffic counts, and then also the public's input. But yes, then finally your approval, this body's approval of the active transportation plan. We'll also,
Yes, so currently you don't need any action from us. It's just a status report.
no, we're just giving you an update, and I can finish this up really quickly here just for time.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, I just want to point out real quick, because this is a subject worthy of due diligence and time, and certainly they've gone through and put together a great presentation. I'd hate to cut that short, but I would like to point out that we're not just talking about social mobility. You know, we're not just talking about, you know, economic development in that context. If you ever get a hold of the book Bikeonomics, businesses that are in proximity to designated bike routes have a 10 to 15% higher level of profit, and they also have a 10 to 15% higher value, resale value, as far as the, you know, the ad valorem value of that piece of property goes. But I'll let y'all continue with your presentation.
Yes, Commissioner Galo, go ahead.
You're used to compare that. I mean, you go New York City, you know, all the major metropolitan areas, I can understand that. You go to Dallas, Texas, I bet those numbers aren't anywhere close to that.
Go to Brownsville, and they are, with all respect, sir, where they're really pushing active transit. Brownsville's seeing just great results. It's not just because we're on the border and because we're, you know, whatever, at a lower poverty, with a higher poverty rate, does that hold true? It's quite the converse, where in those areas that are impoverished, where active transit has just so much more bang for the buck. But I digress.
If you don't mind, if I may have the floor, please. Why are we going so far? San Bernardo is exactly what happened with San Bernardo. You all, I mean, obviously you all had some kind of data saying about San Bernardo that was needing those bike lanes. I pass by 3 or 4, I usually go through San Bernardo 3 or 4 times a week. And so for everything, all those businesses should be at 10, 15% higher. All the people there should be a lot more people on there traveling those bike lanes. And I could tell you those cartoneros are usually in the middle of the San Bernardo, not even on the bike lane. So why are we getting all these data from everywhere else when we have it right here next to us? And what is it? What is the data?
And the data becomes meaningful once San Bernardo is fully connected. Right now, it's kind of like a bookend, if you will. But yeah, your point's very well taken.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's something we are addressing and looking at is what's the economic impact, and both those points are meaningful. Saying, hey, let's not look too far away. Let's look close. Let's look comparable. And then the other point is, it's hard to compare something that's not a complete system, just a stretch where there's some paint on the ground. But I will say this: one of the examples we're going to show is, I'm sure many of you are familiar with Golondrinas and the success they've had there. And I don't know how aware y'all are of why they chose that location and what they wanted to create there in connection with the park and the active transportation, and how much of their business comes from people that either are on a walk or on a bike ride and stop there, or come there to then go on a walk or bike ride after. But we're going to present that in this plan to show that as an example, one of others, and it does have an impact. It's, again, the biggest thing with all this is we're not trying to get everybody on a bicycle. That's not the purpose of this. It's about providing more options where, maybe right now the data shows less than 1% of trips are done on bicycle. We're just looking at upping that by a few percentage points and looking at how we're doing transit and increasing that as well. We're not talking about getting everybody on a bus and walking and biking. We're just talking about providing more options so that we increase more as a share and we look more like a city of comparable size. That's all. So, Jason, I'm going to finish this up just so we end quickly. Just to show you our timeline, ultimately, we're leading to late this summer, a presentation to the MPO Policy Committee, and also we would like to present this plan after it's been presented to the MPO. We'd like to present it to the City Council as well of Laredo. If you want to get involved, if you're hearing this presentation and you want to get involved, we have a few subcommittees, and we've already got volunteers for each of these subcommittees. We're still open to taking more, so contact me if you want to get involved.
Well, why wouldn't you have this ready prior to then, like you and I spoke about earlier, that you would have this thing wrapped up prior to December?
Well, I think the current COVID-19 crisis has really slowed down our public input, and there's a crucial component of this, of public input. We don't want to do this just with drawing up plans. I think that's when we get into some of the problem like San Bernardino, is it may be low-hanging fruit to put paint down there, but was that really where people would use it most? And that's what we want to avoid. We want, if we're going to make suggestions and recommendations about where to use funds, very limited funds on active transportation, we want to make sure that we're doing this with the best amount of input given the constraints we have in time and budget.
And
so,
Mayor, may I be heard?
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. I won't take up too much time. Thank you for the presentation, Mr. Snyderman. And I hear all the comments coming from both sides, but ultimately, I think as an MPO, we have to plan the transportation, right? We have to plan all types of transportation in our city. I'll turn this camera on for a second. And we do have an active transportation component that we have to incorporate as we're moving forward. All cities are doing this, or many major metropolitan cities are doing this. And we have to not just keep pace with them, but we have to understand that modern cities or cities in the future are likely going to be different than what you see right now. And as we start making these changes, we also have to understand that patterns won't change overnight, right? So there are patterns that have been established and how people get from one point to another that have been established for decades here in Laredo and our surrounding areas. But But over the course of time, people, if we invest and we plan appropriately, I don't think these are a wasted opportunity. I think this is a great opportunity to create pockets within our city, and from a planning perspective, pockets within our city that can lead to economic growth in those areas. If we can get people to not have to take their car, but grab a bicycle or walk in a very safe way to go to a convenience store, then you start to get this movement of people. And mobility, when you have to have foot traffic, if you will, in order to get people to stop, right? That's one of the problems that we have in downtown a lot, is that people are driving through. Laredo, for instance, nobody really stops in Laredo because they're driving through to San Antonio to an extent. But if we can get people out on the sidewalks, out on the streets, they're much more likely to stop at a store because they're already there. And these are the things that we have to do as an MPO. We have to start thinking about these bigger philosophical changes in the structure of the city and the county. But also we have to realize that we're competing against a lot of other cities. And so we have to show commitment towards this and use those funds in a very meaningful way, in a very strategic way to maximize the benefit of it. And so I think that everybody's correct, right? We don't know what it's going to look like, but if as a city, as a county, and as an MPO, we strategically keep incentivizing this type of growth, it will happen. Patterns of behavior will change. And there are many studies throughout the United States and throughout the country where it illustrates that when people are on the street, they're much more likely to stop, and then the economy rises. And that happens everywhere, because people are more likely to go into the stores. So just so you know, I do understand that it seems like a lot that's happening, but it's necessary for our economy. It's necessary for our environment, and it's necessary for all the people that rely on us to make sure that that they have access to the people around them, to the economy around them. So that's all I'm going to say about it. I think that it's a good project that we're doing.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. Yeah, so any concluding thoughts, Mr. Kirby?
I just want to say thank you for your support. We'll be bringing you back the findings of this plan and the plan itself. And we're interested in everybody's perspective here from the policy committee. And again, we had those many plans before that maybe surprised you. It wasn't 5, it was 30 plans that have touched on active transportation. We're not going to bring anything that you don't know or that you haven't heard before. That's not going to be the success of this plan. The success of this plan will be that we bring practical and realistic goals that can be implemented for the city and the county, and that will change over time, have an impact on people's behavior, and provide more options like the governor suggested. So thank you very much. And thank you, Jason, for helping present that and for your work on the plan so far.
Yeah, good report, Jason. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Snyderman. The last item is status report by the Regional Mobile Authority, and that's item B under Roman numeral 5. Do we have a written report, or do we have someone from the RMA?
Vanessa, they sent an update. Did you include that in the packet, or do you have it to read?
Yes, it is included in the packet.
Mr. Seidman, this is Tony Rodriguez,
Hey, Tony, yes, sir, go ahead.
representing the Regional Ability Authority.
Okay, go ahead.
How you doing, Mr. Mayor? Everyone, Policy Committee? It's good to see everybody. It's been some time, and I hope everyone's doing well and healthy. So I will keep our update very brief. We had a board meeting last week. At that board meeting, we basically executed and finalized our advanced funding agreement with the Texas Department of Transportation, as well as the updated interlocal agreement with the city of Laredo for the Kilo Industrial Boulevard turn lanes project. That's the immediate action that we took last week. With regards to projects that the RMA is working on, first and foremost, of course, the Kilo Industrial Boulevard turn lane, the intersection project all over at 1472. The RMA submitted 100% signed and sealed construction documents to the Texas Department of Transportation for moving that project forward. And it's a scheduled advertisement letting for August of this year. And
tentatively looking at a construction commencement in November of this year. So this is a big success for the RMA and for the city of Laredo and for TxDOT, because this project, despite its size, is a joint partnership effort between the city of Laredo, the Regional Mobility Authority, and the Texas Department of Transportation. It's a good example of how all three groups work together for the advancement of the city of Laredo. So we are very happy about this project going forward to the next phase. And thanks again
This is which, could you repeat that? I'm sorry, I kind of missed it. Is that the Killam Industrial project, or which one is it? I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
The Killam Industrial Boulevard Turn Lanes project.
Okay.
If you recall, this was one of the projects that was recommended by the 2015 Mines Road study by TTI, one of the mid-range project improvements. And the RMA, working with the city of Laredo and the Texas Department of Transportation, are now moving this project forward for bid in August. And I want to thank Mr. David Salazar and his team, Tito Gonzalez, for their support and their assistance in helping us get this project going forward. It's a great success for the city of Laredo, Webb County, the Regional Mobility Authority, and the Texas Department of Transportation. That's number one. Another project, Los Presidentes. This project is a joint partnership effort with the city of Laredo, the Webb County Drainage District, and the RMA. This project is now at 90% design, and we're looking also at advertising for that project with the city of Laredo in August, September timeframe, and construction commencing as well this fall. Those are these are the first two projects at the RMA with the partnership with the city and TxDOT of the county that we're finally going to get in the ground and help the city, the community. So we're really proud of these projects.
If I may,
of course.
If I may,
sir.
Yes, go ahead, Commissioner.
I just want to say congratulations, guys. I mean, Tony, tell Chairman Brown, and of course all the committee members, congratulations. I'm glad they're finally going to jump in there with both feet. So it's good to see, and hopefully working with you all long into the future.
Absolutely, Commissioner. Thank you so much. We've been working hard. It's been a long road, but we're glad we're here and we're jumping in with both feet. So thank you for your support and those words.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I may, I'd just reiterate Commissioner Galo's statement. I mean, Tony's been, how do I put this correctly? Just, I guess, been like a steady drumbeat in the background. Even kind of in the early RMA days when they were met with such hostility. Frankly, y'all just stuck with it. And frankly, I think Tony, you're the one that kind of finally helped put together a formula, and you made sure that TxDOT was as a stakeholder, that they were on board from day one, and then you brought us a solution as a council that was something that we could get back behind and CIP our way through that, and then y'all reached out to the landowners, and well done. But giving credit where credit's due, your tenacity, that was the word I was looking for a little while ago, definitely is a key ingredient in bringing this about. So thank you, sir.
Councilman, thank you so much for those kind words. And you know what? I almost forgot. How could I forget? Mr. Ramon Chavez was such a big component in helping us get this project forward. He's still helping us, and can't say enough good things about Ramon to get these projects moving forward, and especially with Killam Industrial Boulevard. So we're moving forward, and I think these projects are just examples of the projects that we'll be looking in the future as well, where if there's an issue, and maybe we can continue to team with the city of Laredo, Webb County, and TxDOT to advance projects moving forward. If there's some form of funding gap, or if there's a funding solution we can find, I think that's the path we want to start looking forward. And my discussions with Chairman Brown, that's definitely how he wants to see.
Y'all might be happy to thank you, Tony, for your efforts, but also have you all completed that northwest traffic study?
Yes, sir.
Study? Yeah.
Yes, sir, we did. We completed that study at the end of March. We did provide a presentation to the MPO and Webb County Commissioners Court. We were looking to provide one to City Council, but unfortunately, I think the COVID pandemic kind of put a little bit of kibosh on that. However, that being said, we are still willing and very much able to make a presentation to City Council to provide an overview of the results of that study. But it has been finalized. We provided a copy to the MPO as well as also to the City of Laredo, and we're going to provide a final copy as well to Webb County Commissioners Court as well. And I can work with Mr. Mayor, your staff, to try to get on the next council agenda or the appropriate council agenda to make that final presentation for council via WebEx.
Sure. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, you can visit with Kirby as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, yes, sir. Go ahead, please.
Definitely. Well, I do have one last project, and it's a project that we're still working on, and it's still a priority for the RMA. Is the Biofield Road project. This project is still ongoing. Back in February, the RMA decided to move forward with continuing the study of this project. We're in the process of actually doing a traffic study to determine what the amount of traffic the project will generate and the arterial will actually receive in truck traffic over the next 20 years. That's number one. Number two, with that information, develop a more refined pavement section for the project to ultimately refine the construction cost estimate for the project. The overall arching goal with that is ultimately to present to the Texas Transportation Commission for discretionary funding to advance that project. Because to date, what we do have identified funding for is between the RMA, the City of Laredo, and the landowner is roughly about $14 to $15 million. We still have, unfortunately, about a good $15 million funding gap. So we're looking, hopefully, the Transportation Commission at the state level to assist with that. It's a high priority, and we're still pushing it, and we're not letting it go till we see it through the finish line. Are there any questions?
Yeah, questions for Mr. Rodriguez? And if not, I think, is that the end of your report, sir?
Yes, sir. So Thank you again, everybody. And once again, I just want to say thank you for everyone's support for these projects moving forward. We are very proud of them, and we're going to continue to move forward for future opportunities as well. I hope everyone has a great afternoon and stay healthy.
Yeah, do the same. Thank you, Tony. Do we have any other business before this committee? And if not, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
A second. Is there a second? Okay, I would second that. The others in favor say aye. Any opposed? None heard. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.